Well, good morning, everyone. This story from Genesis today is one of my all-time favorite stories in the Bible. It is. It's a weird little story, but it's one of my favorites in the Bible. And I think it's really important for all of us, actually, even though we might not think about it too often, because this is the story where the people of Israel get their name. So in a real way, God defines the people of Israel, God's chosen people, by this story. And what's this story about? It's about struggle and blessing. And as people of faith today, we are still defined by that same story because life is full of struggle and blessing. So this late night wrestling bout with Jacob starts in verse 24. It says, Jacob was alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. Now we'll get to the man later, but let's start with this first part. Jacob was left alone. He was all by himself because this could be the end for him, and he knows it. You see, Jacob has been running away for a long, long time. It really all started when he was born. You see, Jacob was born with a twin brother, Esau, and Esau was born first, making him the oldest. And of course, in this culture, that meant that the oldest son was the one who would get the inheritance. The oldest son is the one who would lead the family into the future. The oldest son is the one who would receive all the family blessings and carry them on. And so that was Esau, the oldest son. But then Jacob, his twin, was born next, and Jacob, this baby, came out with his arms flailing, and it looked like he was grabbing at his other brother, Esau, and so his parents named him Jacob, which means heel grabber or supplanter. Somebody who takes other people by the heels and trips them. Somebody who cheats and manipulates to get ahead in life. What an interesting choice to label your child as that, my little heel grabber, Jacob. By the way, Esau just means hairy because Esau came out as a very hairy baby, so they said, hairy, heel grabber. So just imagine that, someone coming up to Rebecca, oh, you had babies? Oh, they're twins, so lovely. What are their names? Well, this is Harry. We think he's going to be a wild man, and this is a heel grabber, supplanter, someone who stabs people in the back, maybe his own brother later in life. Who knows? What an interesting choice to label your children that, don't you think? But as they grow up, we're also told that the mother and the father, they love different children. So Isaac, the father, he loves Esau, and Isaac loves Esau because Isaac likes meat. See, Esau wasn't just hairy when he grew up. He was strong. He was a hunter, a wilderness survival kind of person. And the text tells us that Isaac loved Esau because he was fond of game? That's why you love your son? But there's Isaac. Picture that on a Father's Day card. The conditional love of a father who loves red meat most of all in his children. But there was Isaac. He loved Esau most of all. But then Jacob is a different kind of person. Jacob, the text tells us, was a quiet man living in tents. That's what we're told. So this is a more indoors kind of person, a more introspective, thoughtful kind of person. But Rebekah loved Jacob. So do you see what Jacob was born into? He was born into this conflicted relationship between him and his brother. And then his name is a constant reminder, this little heel grabber, that he and his mother are pitted in life against his father and his brother to see who can come out on top. And sure enough, in life, Jacob and Rebekah, they work so that Jacob can live up to his namesake, his supplanter namesake, so he can get ahead. And the first thing that Jacob does is trick Esau into giving up his birthright to him in exchange for what? Does anyone remember? A bowl of soup. A bowl of lentil soup. He didn't even hold out for some surf and turf, a nice steak dinner. He gave it up for a bowl of lentil soup when he was hungry. By the way, maybe do you think this is part of why Rebekah wanted her other son, the more thoughtful son, to be in charge of the family instead of the one who could be tricked into giving up his birthright for some soup? Maybe, who knows? But Esau is one of those impulsive kind of people. He doesn't think things through, and Jacob took advantage of that, manipulated the situation, and got his brother's birthright. And then later, after that, Isaac, when he got very old, he knew he was coming to the end of his life, and it was time to get all of his affairs in order. And so he called Esau over because it was time to give his son a blessing. of course, his firstborn son, the son he loved the most, the son who was the best provider of meat. And so Isaac says to Esau, go and catch me something yummy. We'll come back here, have a barbecue, eat together, and then I'll bless you. It'll be a wonderful afternoon. But then as Esau goes off, Rebekah hears what's going on. And Rebekah, who seems to be the mastermind, she's really the cleverest one in this little family group. She comes up with a plan, and she cooks up some yummy food and then sends Jacob in with the food and dresses him in goat skin so that he'll feel hairy like his brother and trick their father. And you're thinking, no one could be that thick. Right? No one could be fooled by some goat skin. Maybe Isaac passed some of his brains on to Esau. I don't know. But Isaac was fooled. And Isaac blessed Jacob, thinking that he was blessing the other son. And of course, when Esau comes back, Esau is furious. He has had enough with his little heel grabber, supplanter, manipulator, little brother. He's going to do something about it, but he knows his father is sick. His father isn't going to be long for this world. So he's going to wait it out, and as soon as Isaac dies, Esau is going to go and kill his brother Jacob. But Rebekah, again, the smart one here, she realizes what's going on, and she makes another plan. She sends Jacob off, and she tells Jacob, we're going to tell everyone that you're going to find a wife. So go and find a wife in this other town and stay there. Because if you come back here, I'm telling you, your brother is going to kill you. And so Jacob runs away. And he finds this woman to marry. He finds Rachel. And it's not just an arranged kind of thing. Actually, he loves Rachel, and Rachel loves him back. But here comes a point in his life where it's Jacob's turn to be manipulated now. And Rachel's father, Laban, tricks him somehow into marrying the other sister first. And so Jacob ends up marrying both sisters and working for 14 years for Laban to pay that off. And then after that, Jacob works another 6 years in exchange for a small amount of Laban's livestock, just some speckled, spotted animals. But Jacob is clever. Jacob knows what he's doing here. He comes up with a plan, and so he uses some selective breeding techniques to make sure that his stocks start to grow and they start to be stronger, and soon Laban's flock, that was the bulk of it, they start to be really weak and small, and Jacob now has all this huge herds and flocks and donkeys and camels and slaves, but Laban's sons start to notice, and they think, that little heel grabber, that manipulator, taking advantage of our family, taking all our father's stuff that's going to be our stuff. So they come up with a plan that they're going to do something about their Jacob problem. So Jacob finds himself in trouble yet again, poisoned another well in this town. The people are against him. But where is he supposed to go? So God speaks to Jacob. God says, return to the land of your ancestors and to your kindred, to your brother, and I will be with you. Like Jacob, it's time to go home. It's time to go back, to face what you've been running for 20 years, to face your brother. And God says at the end of that, but remember, I will be with you. Because God has always been with Jacob. God's been with Jacob all along, even when Jacob didn't realize it. You see, Jacob is under God's promise, God's covenant that God made with Jacob's grandparents, Abraham and Sarah, that they would be part of something bigger than themselves, that they would build this great nation and people, that they would be a blessing for the world. And God has not given up on that promise yet. But to be honest, I don't think that Jacob was too excited about this idea of going back home to his brother to face the music. But he knew that he couldn't stay there either. So he went. He took everything he had gotten in this new land, his wives and children and slaves and all the animals and wealth, and he left without telling Laban, hoping that he could escape. But Laban is mad, and so he goes and catches up with Jacob, and we think, oh no, this might be it. But it works out, and Laban ends up leaving Jacob in peace and going back. So at this point in the story, Jacob is like, I might get through this. This might just work. I might be okay. And Jacob is clever, remember? So he decides to send some gifts, some nice bribes ahead to his brother Esau, so that maybe things will be smoothed over by the time he gets there. But then Jacob gets word that Esau is coming to meet him with 400 military-age men. So he is in trouble. his brother, is going to do what he was started to plan to do 20 years ago and finally kill his supplanter, heel grabber little brother. And Jacob knows that he's clever, but Esau has always been bigger. He's always been stronger. Now he has more fighting men by his side. It's inevitable that Jacob will lose. Really, it was always inevitable that Jacob would lose to his bigger, stronger, older brother. He's just been living on borrowed time for decades. He's been running away from consequences. He's been running away from the relational wells that he's poisoned, running away from what he's done and who he is, and suddenly there's nowhere left for him to run anymore. So the only thing Jacob can think of doing is to split up his forces. That way at least Esau will come and kill one camp, and the other camp will be able to get away for a little while. But even that isn't much of any hope. It's just putting off the inevitable. It's going to come. It's going to happen. There's nothing he can do about it. But Jacob does it. He splits up his forces into smaller and smaller groups, and then finally it's just Jacob and his family, and then he sends even his family off, and it's just him, all alone. There's no one left to protect him, no one to hide behind, no more cards to play, no more clever tricks. It's just him in the dark, facing the reality that this is it. And my friends, at some point in life, we all face those kind of moments, those dark nights of the soul, where we've been running away from something and suddenly that thing has caught up with us. Maybe it's as simple as we've been running away from some kind of difficult decision that you didn't want to make, and you've been putting it off, but you can't put it off any longer. And here the decision comes, you have to choose one way or another. Maybe you've been running away from a serious problem in your relationship that just won't go away on its own. Maybe you've been running away from some difficult, painful part of your past that you've never really dealt with, and that keeps eating away at you, and you just can't put it off any longer. Or maybe you're running away from this nagging feeling in the back of your head that something isn't right, that your life just isn't turning out the way that it should. This world isn't the kind of world that it should be. You don't know your place in it, and you think, does any of this actually matter? Does any of it matter? We often face these dark nights of the soul, these moments when we have no other things to distract us, when the buffers are all gone, when we feel alone and in the dark. And here we are. That's where Jacob finds himself in our reading. Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him all night until daybreak. When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, Jacob was not giving up here. He struck him on the hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint as he wrestled, but Jacob kept going. He still would not quit fighting. This mysterious wrestler said, "Let me go, for the day is breaking." But Jacob said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." So Jacob clearly knows that this is not some normal human being he's dealing with, someone who could just pop his hip out of socket. This is some kind of divine being, some kind of being with the power to bless him in a meaningful way. And he says, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." Why? You see, for his whole life, Jacob has known about that covenant between God and his grandparents, that promise that was supposed to live through his family, through him. He was supposed to be a part of something bigger than himself. He was supposed to be a blessing for the world, and he hasn't seen it to be true. That's not how his life has gone down. It seems like it's just been one struggle after another. And then he had some victories which seemed to have only led him down into more trouble, more struggles after that. And here he is with nowhere left to run, facing his fear, his doubts, and his anger. But he's finally decided that he's done running away from it. And he's not going to let go until he sees that God's blessings are real, until he sees that that promise is true. See, he needs to know that everything he's been through is not for nothing. Have you ever felt that way? Like, God, I need to know that all of this is not for nothing, that it's not all been in vain. But then this wrestler asked Jacob, "What is your name?" And what a question that is. What a question that is. How convicting of a question. Because what he's really saying is, are you going to admit who you are, or are you going to keep pretending to be someone else, like you pretended to be your brother Esau? Are you going to admit how you have lived up to your namesake, how you have manipulated and cheated in your life, how you have gotten yourself where you are? Or are you going to deny it and explain it away? But Jacob's done running, and so he says, I'm Jacob. That's me. I'm the heel grabber. I'm the manipulator, the supplanter. I've done these things. That's me. So then the man said, you shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel. And that is such a powerful statement. You do not have to be defined by that identity anymore. You don't have to be limited by that. You are so much more than what other people put on your life. You are so much more than the choices you've made, good and bad. You are so much more than the mistakes that you've made. So I will call you Israel, because you have striven, struggled with God and with humans and have prevailed. You're still here. And if you're still here, that means your story isn't done yet. God's promise is still for you. God's blessing is for you and through you. So then Jacob asked him, please tell me your name. But he said, why is it that you ask my name? Which I think we can think of as a kind of flippant response. Why do you ask my name? But think about it. I think that question is really saying, why are you asking a question you already know the answer to? You know what's going on here, Jacob. You know that it's God who has been at work this night. And there he blessed him. And so Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, for I have seen God face to face, and yet my life is preserved. And the sun rose upon him as he passed Peniel, limping because of his hip. And then maybe you know how the story goes after that. Jacob leaves after this night, and he goes and meets his brother Esau. But when Esau sees him, his brother, for the first time in 20 years, he runs out and embraces him. By the way, we don't know if that was his plan or not. What we do know is that God was certainly working through Esau as well in that moment. And both brothers end up weeping in each other's arms. The family is reunited. They're stronger, more numerous, more wealthy than they ever have been before. So let me ask you, how does this story define us as a people of faith? Life for all of us, at some point, is filled with struggle and with blessing. And those dark nights of the soul, like Jacob's, they are not pleasant. We don't want to go through them. It's terrifying to face the harsh, bitter realities of life sometimes, which is why often we just try and run away. We try and live in denial to the real problems around us, even though they keep eating away at us. But we are not called to be a people who always run away. We are called to be a people who are real with one another in God, who are honest and struggle with one another and struggle even with God. God can take it. Refusing to let go of God. And this is what I think that tenacious faith is, persistent faith. It's refusing to let go of God unless we see that blessing, even when we don't see it right now. But that can be painful. That struggle is painful. Jacob walked away from this wrestling match limping. We might walk with a limp for a while after we go through these painful, dark nights, but it's worth it. Because that's how we grow. That is how we grow deeper in faith. By facing up to our fears and doubts and anger, and even giving them to God, God can take it. It's that honest struggling that can change the course of our lives for the better. Think about it. Sometimes it's that class you fail, the program that you fail, that then shows you that God is actually leading you down a different path that's better suited for who you are anyway. Sometimes it's that fight you have, that horrible fight with the spouse or friend that brings into the open things you haven't been talking about so that you can work through them, get over them. And sometimes it's that crisis of faith that is horrible and painful and makes you question everything. But it's that crisis of faith that actually makes you take your faith more seriously. Maybe let go of some of these shallow platitudes and grow into a deeper, more meaningful relationship with God. So may we struggle together. May we see that God's blessing is for us and through us. And may we know God's promise that God has always been with us. And what really counts is not that we don't let go of God. What counts is that we know God will never let go of us. Amen.